War has many faces, some hidden behind helmets, some behind lies. But in the shadows of World War II, one woman wore a face so convincing that even the Nazis who hunted her believed she was one of them. Her name was Evelyn Hart, though history almost forgot it. To the Germans, she was Eva Mahler, a charming French-German widow who served their cause. But beneath that disguise beat the heart of a British spy, one of the most daring women in WW2 espionage history. Evelyn was born in London in 1915, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a clockmaker. Her life had been simple until 1940, when the German Blitz reduced her home to rubble and her younger brother, Thomas, was killed in the bombing. That night changed her forever. She swore that she would fight, not with guns, but with intelligence, wit, and courage. In 1941, she was recruited by the Special Operations Executive, SOE, Britain's secret wartime intelligence organization. The SOE believed that spies win wars long before soldiers do. Evelyn's fluency in French and German, her calm under pressure, and her ability to read people made her the perfect candidate for covert work behind enemy lines. Her mission was deadly simple and nearly impossible. She was to infiltrate Nazi-occupied France under a false identity, gather intelligence on German troop movements, and send coded messages to London through a hidden radio network. The average lifespan of an SOE agent in France was 6 weeks. But Evelyn would survive for 2 years. On a cold April night in 1942, she boarded a black Lysander aircraft on an isolated airfield in southern England. The pilot turned to her and said, "Once you cross that line, Miss Hart, there's no turning back." She smiled faintly. "Then let's make it worth it." As the plane lifted into the darkness, she whispered a prayer for her brother, the one she couldn't save, and promised herself she'd save others instead. The drop was rough. She parachuted into a field outside Lyon, France, where members of the French resistance were waiting. They gave her papers, a new name, Eva Mahler, and a story. She was a war widow working as a translator for the German administration. The next morning, she walked straight into the Lion's Den, the Nazi command office, with a forged letter of introduction and a calm smile. The Gestapo had no reason to doubt her. She played her role flawlessly. Her accent was perfect, her demeanor refined but humble. She carried herself like someone who had suffered under war, not fought against it. Within weeks, she was trusted by several officers and given access to internal memos and courier logs. What they didn't know was that every night, she transcribed details of troop movements, coded them with invisible ink, and smuggled them through resistance couriers to London. Her courage didn't end there. When German patrols raided resistance hideouts, Evelyn would tip them off hours before the attack. She saved dozens of fighters from capture, including a young radio operator named Jean Duval, who would become both her ally and closest friend. "You're too brave for your own good," he once told her. She replied, "Bravery isn't a choice. It's what's left when fear is useless. But courage has a cost." By late 1943, suspicion began to grow. The Gestapo had discovered that secret messages were leaking from Lyon. They began interrogating civilians, searching homes, and watching their own officers. Evelyn knew the net was closing, yet she refused to flee. Her final mission was the most dangerous yet, to intercept plans for a new German supply route to Normandy, information the Allies desperately needed before D-Day. She seduced an SS officer named Kurt Reinhardt, a man as cruel as he was intelligent. For weeks, she played her role, the grieving widow seeking protection, the sympathetic ear to his frustrations about the war. He fell for her act completely. Drug. The rain in Lyon that night seemed endless, cold, sharp, and filled with warning. Evelyn Hart, the woman the Nazis knew as Eva Mahler, had just transmitted the most important message of her life. She had handed the Allies the key to crippling the German supply line. But in doing so, she had lit a beacon straight to herself. By dawn, Gestapo patrols were already closing in. They raided apartment blocks, interrogated shopkeepers, and dragged resistance members from their homes. Evelyn stayed calm, burning all traces of her codes, burying her radio beneath the floorboards of a cafe basement. She'd survived 2 years behind enemy lines, but she knew this time would be different. The Gestapo arrested Jean Duval that morning. They found the burned fragments of her cipher notes in his flat. Before he was taken, Jean managed to whisper one final warning to a cafe worker loyal to Evelyn. "Tell her they know." Evelyn received the message as she walked through the crowded market square, dressed in her usual disguise, neat gray coat, leather gloves, and a widow's veil. She didn't flinch. Spies didn't have that luxury. Instead, she turned down a side street and entered the Hotel de la Laure, where Major Kurt Reinhardt was waiting, the man who thought he loved her. He rose when she entered, his expression unreadable. "Eva," he said softly, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "Sit. We need to talk." Evelyn smiled, her heart steady though she felt the storm inside her chest. "What troubles you, Major?" she asked. Reinhardt stared into his glass. "You've been careless. There are whispers. People are vanishing. Someone is feeding information to London. Tell me that it isn't you." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she leaned forward, eyes glistening. "If I were a spy, Kurt, do you think I'd still be here?" Her transfer to Berlin for further interrogation. But Evelyn had no intention of going anywhere. On the morning of the transfer, she used the very skills that had made her invaluable to the British intelligence network. She convinced her guards she was gravely ill, coughing blood and collapsing in the corridor. When they called for medical assistance, she seized her chance. Using a sharpened wire she'd hidden in her dress seam, she picked the handcuffs and escaped through a supply tunnel beneath the prison. Outside, she was met by a group of resistance members, remnants of the same network she had saved countless times before. They led her to a safe house in the countryside. For days, she hid in an attic, feverish and weak, while Allied bombers thundered overhead. But even as her body failed her, her mind remained sharp. She knew her mission wasn't over. Through a smuggled radio, she contacted London once more. "Agent Eve reporting. Mission success. Supply route destroyed. Resistance in Lyon compromised. Recommend extraction impossible. End message." Those were her last words to the world she served. When Allied troops liberated France months later, they found no record of Evelyn Hart, no official report of her capture or death. The Gestapo files labeled her as missing, presumed executed. But whispers spread among soldiers and resistance fighters alike. Tales of a female spy who fooled the Nazis, who escaped death itself and vanished like smoke into the ruins of war.